Great. Thank you very much. Startups, that was really good. Deep experience, many years of experience being shared there. So now I would like to welcome Helen Fisher, Marcus Hui, and Guy Truan Lai to the stage to talk about things from the investors' side. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So now we get to hear the other side of the story. And I think we should probably start by each individual talking about what they're interested in, what their fund is looking for, geographically or by therapeutic or whatever have you. So maybe Helen, would you like to go first?
Yep. Hi everyone. My name is Helen Fisher. I run BioCapital Impact Fund. It's a global fund. It is an evergreen fund, and one of the reasons why it is evergreen is basically for those reasons that Langston articulated, and basically it avoids having to do a fire sale or impose our own exit timelines on our companies. So we're a lot more strategic about that. So the fund is a global fund. We invest fairly broadly into health. So anywhere from drug development, medical devices, diagnostics, digital health. And we also have a bit of an angle where we look at health more holistically. So we recognize that the quality of air, quality of water and food also impact our health. And therefore, we would invest into technologies that are capable of impacting health from air, water, food. Impact is one of our investment criteria, so we're looking for large-scale global impact. So just to give a quick example, investing into aged care with 50 beds obviously does have impact, but it's quite localized, whereas what we're looking for is technology that's capable of impacting globally. What else would you like me to...
I think you invest at all stages, is that
Yeah,
right?
we do. So we have a slight preference for later stage, and what we would say later obviously depends on the subsector. So say if it's drug development, we prefer companies to be in the clinic. If it's medical devices, then past proof of concept. But again, it depends. And for exceptional technologies, we are happy to look at early stage. We can lead or follow, syndicate, so pretty flexible. And because we are an evergreen fund and we continuously raise our own money and we're continuously deploying. So we obviously want to make sure that we don't run out of capacity to invest, and therefore our investment mandate is fairly broad.
Awesome. Marcus.
First off, thanks, Yanlin, for the invitation. Very happy to be in Singapore. It's good to see such great turnout as well. Marcus from GT Healthcare Capital Partners. We're a Hong Kong-based healthcare investment firm. We focus on medtech and therapeutic investments globally. Most of our projects are actually in the States and Europe. Asia probably accounts for around 20%-ish. We predominantly focus on pre-A to Series B investments, but we've also done a number of earlier stage spin-off kind of companies as well. We like to be quite flexible with how we work with entrepreneurs, and looking forward to speaking with a lot of you later on.
Excellent. Now, Jiguan from Qiming.
I'm Guy Truan from Qiming Venture Partners. We are a Chinese VC with offices in Shanghai, Beijing, Suzhou, Hong Kong, and recently in Singapore. We invest across two verticals, tech and consumer as well as healthcare. So I'm from the healthcare investment team, and within healthcare, we invest along the entire value chain of healthcare. So that can range from preclinical, like life science tools and reagents, to infrastructure enabling capabilities and services like CROs, CDMOs, and its variants. The typical biotech, medtech, IVDs, digital health, healthcare services, insurtech. We also occasionally invest in one or two incubators as well as distributors as well. We are early stage investors, so we invest, our sweet spot is seed as well as Series A. That's 63% of investments. However, with the soft market these days, we are going earlier at pre-seed more, and as well as Series B and Series C nowadays. But our sweet spot really is still in the early stage investors side. We have a growth fund for portfolio companies to help support them till IPO, which is our favorite strategy. Since 2006, since we were set up, we have invested more than 530 portfolio companies with more than 200 exits and 70 IPOs. Looking forward to talking to the rest of the people here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So let's kick off by talking about the things that you look for in a startup. And for the purposes of this question, let's assume you already like the technology. So what else has to be true for you to want to invest? Marcus, maybe you'd like to go first?
Sure. I think maybe using 3 of the top kind of buckets of consideration that you typically use, especially for early stage medtech. Even though, Yanlin, you said we assume that we like the technology as well, but I think product market fit is an interesting one because a lot of people tend to focus on the underlying technology that, at the end of the day, allows you to differentiate from other companies. But the earlier founders could put the product manager hat on and really, it invites all the right questions in terms of what the commercial, clinical opportunity is, whether there's a feasible regulatory plan. It puts a very different frame of reference and instead of just focusing on the tech itself. Second is definitely execution, which is down to the team. And apart from, most founders, I think, come from at least one of the 2 of backgrounds being either very strong commercial or very strong technical. But what's also helpful is the ability to operationalize a business. I think most founders or all founders here will definitely agree, it feels like they're managing everything under the sun basically. So having the right systems in place to help them, the team and the company as a overall to make decisions, document decisions, review decisions, really helps with the efficiency and the execution capabilities of companies, which is exceptionally important for medtech, which is such a process-driven industry. Third is definitely cash flow, which should be self-explanatory. It speaks to your fundraising strategy. It speaks to your use of cash flows. I think that should be, self-evident.
Helen, would you like to comment?
Sure. There's a couple of things. So when you look at technology, or when we look at technology, one of the things that we always do as part of our due diligence, or even before we get there, can this product be manufactured profitably at scale? Maybe not now, but do you have the line of sight to that? You might have a really great product, but if it's not profitable at scale, it's not a product. We also look at where we can add value. So we have certain strengths. So we have certain strategic partnerships that we have developed for different value inflection points in the development of a product. So, can we help with our networks or strategic partnerships? Or sometimes even, we look for what we call expected and unexpected connections. And that's basically between our investee companies or between our networks. So where can we contribute? I think use of funds and sort of having a bit of a clear vision as to how those funds going to be deployed. And also we look at the business model. So if it's a product, how do you sell it? Is it a licensing model, for example? Is it a service provider? So, that should be, the company should be able to clearly articulate how they're going to make money. That's basically, what we're all here for. So, and obviously make a difference. So whether it's the device or the technology addresses an unmet medical need, so how would that be addressed? And as I said, how do people make revenue? Would say physicians want to, or hospitals want to adopt that technology, why would they adopt this technology and not others? So again, depending on the stage of development of the company, different questions would be asked.
And Gi-chuan?
So really just 3 buckets, right? For technology, I also look at it from the product perspective. So that's really part of technology. But the next thing will be really commercial factors like the market size as well as the business models. The rest have already elaborated. And I think the most important and very underrated is the team. The team, especially because we are early stage investors, the team is the one that helps, be the buffer against all the all the risks and unpredictability that could arise during the process, the progress of the company itself. So many times, when we have these conversations with when we try to understand the company through their tech and their product and then the business model, we're actually building that relationship and trying to understand more on the founders as well as the team, to understand their character, to also understand how scrappy and resourceful they are, based on some of the responses they give us as well. So these are things that we constantly look out for. Another thing is that these are the three main buckets, but because we have, to some extent, invested quite a lot of healthcare companies with about 80% of our portfolio companies in China. One thing we look out for also is to create that sort of ecosystem that is synergistic with our existing portfolio companies. To some extent, is an extension of what we want to create, like value add, as Helen has mentioned as well. So whether be it in terms of partnerships with some of our existing portfolio companies, or anchoring or building supply chains, or component manufacturing, that sort of parts. All these things come into the picture. Yeah.
Actually, I've got one other thing that's quite important, and that's IP. So obviously, investors are putting a lot of money into the technology, into the company. So it's important to make sure that a company has strong IP protection.
So that's all the positive things that you look for. What are the deal breakers? Like I said, assuming that you actually like the technology, what are the things that make you think, maybe this is not the right one for me?
Okay, I think the first one is when the management team or the founders are not able to listen. So sometimes you say something and, so I think that's really important. And if the founder, for example, the management, are not open and not listening, that's a turn-off. Also, we always look at the use of funds, and if it's not clear or it's really vague, then that raises alarm bells. So I'll have a think, maybe.
If I flip it to a more positive angle, I think one of the perks of our jobs really is to get to engage with so many visionaries and leaders in the field that are so successful or not successful for whatever reason. And I think one of the commonalities is definitely having the duality of being intellectually humble but assertive. Like, there are times where you need to, be able to take in criticism or feedback, even in, places where you think you're the, exact subject matter expert. But at the same time, there are also situations where you need to be very confident and assertive in terms of believing in what your product and believing in the plan that you're delivering is actually the best path going forward. So I think, given its early stage, team is really kind of the biggest component if you think about kind of red flags.
Yeah, I think I agree with Marcus a lot. I think team is really important. I can't stress enough. And most of the time is really just a conversation, trying to understand more about the company. And through that process is about relationship building and really understanding, trying to quantify in the best way possible the risks that could arise. And everyone brings different bits to the table. So what we are trying to, with the limited set of information that each team provides, we are really trying to project and think from a 5 or even 10-year perspective how much they can bring this to the next stage and following on. So I can't stress that team is very important for us. And I learned a lot, actually, I think given that I'm still fairly young in my investment journey, I'm actually learning the best, most of all this information from all the founders out there who has pitched or shared a bit of his or her experiences with me, and I really thank that they have been what they have done so far.
So how do you think about the balance in putting in, so let's say you invested in a company, and like you said, it's a pot of money, it's limited resource, and you can do a few things with it. You can use that money and invest to make sure your product is hugely differentiated, right? So whatever the core team already has, take that and grow even more differentiation in various aspects. Hopefully that gives you a good market share in the future. Versus, you could say, let's just get out there with minimum viable product, right? So core differentiation, but the rest, let's leave it for version 2. Because what I'm looking for is when's my first revenue, right? When am I gonna start seeing something coming back in? And usually it makes it easier to fundraise or, have a larger syndicate group behind you. So in terms as I think everybody here are long-term investors, like to start in the early stage. How do you deal with this balance and setting the right kind of milestones and the right kind of mentality with your startups? Chi-Kwan, maybe you'd like to start?
I think it's a blend. So we have, I think for many of our medtech portfolio companies, there is a blend of pushing out some products that could at least generate a bit of revenue while getting some marketing as well as, while you are selling, you are also constantly getting feedback and trying to demonstrate the proof of value and improving your product. I think that is important because if you are just focusing on the best product out there, it will take forever and you still don't really know whether it will work to the right patients in that right, to really truly address the right unmet need. So typically we would like, some bits of the product to be launched first just as a soft test. That's all.
I think fundamentally the core task of a CEO or startup founder is to amass the appropriate amount of resources for the company and to present the company at the best light at that particular moment. So that really needs to be the fundamental, call of how they want to devise the development plan and how they want to phase these milestones out and what is considered appropriate as milestones for this particular round, whether it's appropriately sized to the valuation that we're asking for, whether it's still clinically interesting enough to build a commercial case around it. I think once, a bit like what we kind of talked about before, once a product manager kind of hat is on, I think it will be a lot clearer in terms of the entire vision instead of just the technology itself.
I'll tell a quick story, and then that will probably illustrate. So I used to be a partner at Deloitte, and we did quite a lot of consulting. And one health fund came to us, and they said, how can we increase our ROI? And we looked at it, and what we found was that pretty much the returns of the fund were inversely correlated to the number of PhDs in the fund. And we thought, exactly that reaction, how could that be? It doesn't make sense. However, it actually, when we started digging further, it made sense. So a lot of scientists would say, okay, we just do another experiment and it'll work. And so sometimes you have to have the discipline to sometimes say, okay, this is enough. Say that if technology is not working, you have to kill it, rather than do another experiment. And it's similar to what you're saying. Sometimes you need to know when it is the right time to actually say maybe start marketing, and then once you've proven sort of version 1, so to speak, you could go to Mark 2, 3, etc. And so I think it is a bit of a balance, and sometimes it's not a science, it might be an art. So, the more experienced the team is, or the people, the advisory board, or, around you, or the board, it's not a decision made by one person. It's a collaborative decision, and so sometimes the best solution is born in a discussion, etc. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, just like startups, there's no two investors that are exactly the same, and what they look for in a startup will also be different. So I think my next question is around how you as individuals who are investors, how do you personally like to work with startups? How hands-on, how hands-off? At what stages do you like to get involved in? I think it would just be good for the audience to just hear the diversity maybe in how a VC and a startup might work together. So maybe Marcus, you'd like to go first?
Sure. I personally think the startup should definitely be driving in the driver's seat for this discussion. We often, push the ball over to the startup side as well and ask, what do you expect from us? Apart from the money, obviously. And from GT's point of view, we have a whole range of different companies at different stages, and our involvement varies significantly as well. There are, quite a few that were very happily taking the, backseat and just seeing the great results out from the Stella team. But there are also companies that we're taking a very significant stake in, or maybe it's a super early stage project, and we're intimately involved. As in, we're probably having weekly calls with the management team, reviewing almost every significant spending, every significant decision. So I think obviously the capacity will be very limiting for this kind of engagement, but I think founders should always be conscious of what kind of resources they should be asking, or they could be asking out from investors as well.
Ji-Kwan, Qiming has a huge portfolio. So how do you approach, managing such a large portfolio?
So we are a full-service investment firm. So we a huge part for the front office folks, about 1/3 to half our time is really to support the portfolio companies that we have invested in. And that's really mostly from a BD perspective. That's one. We also have dedicated back-end staff to help with hiring of C-suite members and important mid-management folks. We also have program development officers, dedicated portfolio managers to help with the companies. We also have incubator specialists as well to help with some of the very few of the portfolio companies that we are incubating within Qiming. I do agree with Marcus in that in terms of who's driving the development of the progress of the company, it has to be done by the company itself. And that's really what we look at when we decide to invest in a company. The team needs to be motivated, and therefore they should take the driver's seat. So when we approach them, we really come in to try to understand or try to provide whatever support they might need from us. And that's all we try to facilitate.
Helen?
Yeah. With us, we usually do take board seats, so we support companies, and obviously it helps us de-risk our investment to some degree. So, the problems are better solved before they become problems. We have certain strategic partnerships that I've mentioned before, so quite often we can help companies with referrals or with some expertise, for example, that's needed. So we usually look at working collaboratively and supporting companies with whatever we have, not just money, obviously, but other expertise. And, through that one person who takes the board seat, they get access to all the expertise and strategic partnerships of the fund.
Excellent. So I think, once again, we're quickly running out of time. But maybe for this sort of last section, it's a little bit more of an open-ended question as to, are there any common misconceptions or common areas of conflict that, an investor and a startup could get themselves into? And maybe, some thoughts as to how to avoid those things, or what do you do if you find yourself in this kind of situation? Everybody's looking down all of a sudden.
Sure, I'll take it.
Okay.
I think the founders panel spoke a lot about the conflicts or potential considerations that they're having during the fundraising process. And I think that is probably the start of the marriage. Everything that happens afterwards, unfolds in the years to come. And as Helen has mentioned, there are certain strategic decisions, key decisions that has to be made on a board level. And oftentimes, depending on the board composition, board structure, the balance of the investors and shareholders that you have in a company might have a very different take. For instance, and let's say a relatively extreme example, angel groups versus private equities, they might react very differently to an acquisition offer. How do you react back then? And I think these are some of the considerations that founders should bear in mind as early as possible, especially when they're thinking about how they're building their board as well. One thing that I found actually quite useful is for founders to leverage on independent board members. Oftentimes, these people come with significant, industry experience. They're veterans in probably multiple verticals. So at least they have the gravitas or experience to help steer some of these conversations and help you get some consensus as well. So getting the money is just the start of the marriage. We're all in the long run.
Yeah.
I had an interesting example where the conflict was almost, it ended up being with the company, but it was actually between different investors, because different investors had different exit timelines, and some investors were really pushing for the exit, and the company followed that, and the exit didn't happen. And we, for example, were saying that this is not the right time for the exit, and we don't like the exit that's being proposed and worked on. So there was quite a lot of conflict, and in the end, the company did try to go down that route, which was pushed, say, by one investor in particular, and then that didn't work. So there was a lot of time wasted, money wasted, and then we ended up going sort of another way. So I think when you are selecting investors, and when we are investing as well, we are always looking at who the other investors are. It's really important for us to make sure that we are aligned, that there's not going to be a situation like that. So I think that's pretty important. And so when we start thinking about investing, we always think about the potential exit. And we actually are a hybrid fund, so we invest into public and private companies, and we don't have to exit. If we like a company and we think there's a lot more value to be gained, we can continue to hold, like, let's say, post-IPO, let's say, for example, if it's an IPO. But the point is that when you're looking for investors, it's really important to have a bit of a common vision for what the exit would look like potentially and what you're actually striving for, because the development program can actually be tailored to some degree to the exit that you are envisioning. So that's just one.
Excellent.
I think, we have been talking a lot about the investor pool versus the company, but just on the investor to the company relationship alone, to some extent, there will be a bit of differences in opinions once in a while, but ultimately it's about developing that relationship and figuring out which personalities that you can reach out to within the management of the company and persuade them to see your point of view. And of course, acknowledging that you might not always be right as well, and trying to at least reach an understanding. So many times there could be, for example, some of the C-suite folks, some of them might be really experienced, but only from the more technology point of view, but with no business experience. So it's about trying to find that balance, right, from the other C-suite folks and trying to sound it out and trying to get them to buy in and understand and convince the rest of the folks. So that's really quite a lot of things, a lot of the things that we go through as well as we develop that relationship as part of the due team to convince the companies to fulfill certain things beyond what is mentioned on the board meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your insights this evening. We've quickly run out of time for the formal part of this event, but the good news is everybody up here, as well as the startup panel, will be joining us for the networking session, and I'm sure they're more than happy to share more of their insights with you. And so I'm going to close this panel out with a big thank you to our panelists.